Welcome, everyone, to the Comedy.Law podcast, episode 5, To Kill a Mockingbird. I'm Max Langley, and I'm here with Shirelle and Keith. So, Shirelle, this movie deals with
Well, Max, before you start, want you to know I read the book.
What?
I got it. I got the book and I read it, so I'm ready to go.
That is
And
a knockoff book if I've ever seen one.
look, I even turned to the correct page, and I'm going to read to you about To Kill A Mockingbird.
Okay, I'm ready.
I'm ready. Let's hear it.
Okay, here we go. A one-hit wonders should hit so hard. Harper Lee's only novel is the oft-taught tale. By the way, Shirelle, were you taught To Kill a Mockingbird in school?
Not quite that version.
A version?
One of the
It was a
versions.
different version.
Told by little Scout Finch watching her Alabama town rally behind a lying drunk's lying daughter who's up and accused an innocent African American man of taking advantage of her. Lucky for Scout, who watches from a courtroom balcony as her lawyer father defends the man. She's got level-headed pals by her side, including Dill, who is famously modeled after Truman Capote. After a conclusion that leaves you both hopeful and haunted, toast to a sometimes sour justice system with a tequila shot that's guilty of packing a dill pickle punch. So, ready to go. Go ahead, Max.
I like that. That's a pretty good synopsis of what's going on here. So, Shirelle, what did you think about the racial undertones of this novel? Was Harper Lee, was she, good-spirited or mean-spirited when she wrote this?
I think she was definitely sympathetic to the Black experience. The story basically shows the injustice that Tom Robinson, I believe his name was. I told you I'm not good with names. But just what he experienced going through the whole court case, and even during the trial, the attorney Atticus, the questions he even asked the plaintiff or the accuser, I should say. I think to me, it really showed that Harper Lee probably was sympathetic, to people who experience injustice.
Yeah, it was a real hard movie. It's the first time I watched the movie, and it was very difficult for me to watch that movie because of how bad the stereotypes were, Max.
Yeah, it was a little bit rough for me too. I'd read the book though growing up, so I kind of knew the injustices that were going to happen there, and because I think the movie is pretty true to the book, and so you kind of know where it's going to go. It's just very unfortunate. That's the reality though. In 1981, so in 1981, if you're a Black man born in 81, you have a 1 in 3 chance of being incarcerated at some time in your life. I can't imagine what the numbers were for 1881. Somebody like Tom Robinson.
Right.
Yeah, to me, the whole takeaway for me from the movie was that Atticus Finch stands up against hatred, and it was a hard thing to do. There was a lot of ugliness. In the end, we see the hatred represented by the drunk Bob Ewell. He attacks the children of Atticus Finch, and we have salvation of the children, but it was so difficult that lawyers still today are confronted with all the stereotypes, and we have to be prepared to deal with those.
Yeah, I think even when it came to Boo, I mean, obviously there were a lot of there was a lot of racial tension in the film, but I think even when it came to Boo, people just kind of assumed that he was crazy or that he was mean or that he, had all these things happening, and really he was a sympathetic being to some extent. Now, obviously, we don't know everything about him, but the fact that he even saved the children when Bob Ewell, was that his name? He
Yeah.
attacked them. I think it's just judging a book by its cover, right? Like people tend to do that just because of what a person looks like or their background. They just assume, hey, this is the way the person is going to be. But then you end up getting surprised in the end with, like I said, the character Boo and how he helped the children.
And that point, Shirelle, when Scout says, just ask him, he's right there. It's a very scary moment, because you're scared of the monster behind the door. And then when he steps out into the open, all those stereotypes are dealt with. You're right. We
Right.
don't we don't know a whole lot about him, but we know he's not the deranged, crazy guy at that point. He's the guy that just saved the children.
Right. Right.
I think Bob Ewell fell on his own knife.
And see, that's another thing that I have like mixed feelings about because, we think a lot about justice and what's right and making things equitable, right? Like,
Yeah.
um, technically, Boo murdered somebody, but at the same time, the other side of it was he was protecting these kids from essentially the person who actually was the monster, you know. So I guess I understand their decision to kind of not press charges, but on the other hand, it's like, well, he did murder somebody.
Well, the whole issue there was he was in a fight. We saw through Scout's eyes a little bit, or heard a little bit about the struggle between Boo and Bob, and it was a fight to the death, if you will. So what could have happened should have happened. He was in the fight because Bob was attacking the children. So as a takeaway, yeah, I mean, you got to deal with the stereotypical Alabama small town jury issue, which we saw, and that's what the sheriff decided not to put Boo through. But essentially, for me, I thought it was the right answer. That's where the justice system should have ended up.
Well, and Boo was already went through the justice system once and the justice system had already failed him by putting him in places like solitary confinement, which, as we now know, is a total failure of a justice system. Solitary confinement messes you up so much that you really can't recover from it.
That's a great point. I didn't think about that, but the fact that Boo, was incarcerated down in the dungeon and the mold and all the things that we kind of heard about, I didn't really put together that the justice system had already failed Boo one time, failed to deal with his mental health issue at that time.
Right. Well, how do you guys
Justice
feel
gets me
about
emotional, I guess. I don't get it. Allergies.
Go ahead, Sherelle.
I was just gonna ask, as far as Atticus Finch's character, how do you think he felt as, a white man standing up for a black accused person, and he has these two small children, that he has to protect, and you never know like what this mob is gonna do, because they're willing to throw this black man in jail, even though there's a possibility he might be innocent. What do you guys think about that?
I'll take that first, and then Max, it'll come to
All right.
you. But wow, what a huge issue. When the judge comes over, sits on Atticus's porch and says, "Hey, will you take a case and defend Tom?" And the whole town hated Tom, and Bob hated Tom, and you know, forget the fact that Tom didn't really do anything, didn't do anything to get accused, but here you have a lawyer who has to essentially stand up to the entire town, stand up to the stereotypes, the justice system. And it's amazing that Atticus is willing to do that, willing to risk his livelihood. These are his clients in this small town, and expose himself and the children to all of this danger and hatred. And in the movie, Shirelle, we see that I never felt that Atticus, was really in danger, because I just didn't feel like, even when the mob was outside the jail, um, and he was standing up to them, it never occurred to me that he might get attacked, because he seems so, tough. But what we saw is the evil represented by Bob ended up attacking his children. So I think it's a very difficult thing. And by the way, when Atticus, there was an Academy Award for that portrayal of the lawyer in that stereotypical Alabama town.
Yeah, I was blown away by it, and I think that is and there's really momentous occasions in every lawyer's career where you can do something where you stand up for what's right, and that's what Atticus was doing. Atticus was trying to show his children that this is what you do. You stand up for what is right.
Well,
And
and Sherelle, for me, the issue about being scared and having concerns about what happens in the courtroom, that's a very real thing. And that continues throughout your career. And I thought Atticus, played by Gregory Peck, did a great job of confronting the accuser and confronting Bob Ewell when they were on the stand. Um, Certainly, you would have expected there could have been some more, but the jury was seemingly not willing to listen to the issues that he brought up. So, what was your takeaway, Sherelle, of Gregory Peck's display of Atticus Finch, and what do you think that his fears and concerns were when the judge asked him to take the case?
Um, I don't necessarily. I think, like you said, I didn't really necessarily get the idea that he was fearful or afraid. I think for him, the important thing was to make sure that justice was served, to make sure that he represented his client, the best that he could. I don't think there was ever a question in his mind about like, hey, I'm going to do this job and I'm going to do it well. I'm going to protect this person, and this guy is probably innocent. So I think if you already have the understanding that the person is innocent, I don't think there will be a question of whether or not you're going to represent them. Um, so I think
Well,
he was definitely a strong person. I think his character was definitely one of integrity and standard, regardless of whatever other people were saying. Um, I really appreciated his character, and I think that as you said, attorneys should model after Atticus Finch, where it's like, hey, I'm going to do what's right, I'm going to do the job the best way that I can. I think it's important to have integrity in that profession.
well, and that's what a ton of lawyers have done. And based upon this movie, they've decided to become a lawyer, but what happens and what we saw about Atticus throughout the movie is that the character traits, the honesty, um, the willingness to confront stereotypes, it was demonstrated throughout the movie. So it wasn't just something that he adopted; he lived it. he lived it every day.
Well, even if we talk about the kids for a second, just to kind of shift the conversation, Scout, there was one line that Jim had said to Scout that kind of made me chuckle a little bit. I don't remember exactly what the scene was, but he said to her, "Oh, I swear you act more and more like a girl every day." And I thought it was so, like obviously she is a girl, but I
Well, I
love
kind
that
of got
she
all
was.
sad when they made her wear the dress too.
Right. Yeah. Like, I mean, just I liked both of the kids and even the other little boy that was visiting for the summer, like the trio that was the three of them. I liked just how they interacted with each other. And
Yeah.
it was funny to me how Scout was the one who always got into fights, and her brother had to kind of like, not necessarily save her because it looked like she was winning, but he had to kind of like get her back
Yeah,
under control.
get done. Yeah.
I just wonder if they, as kids understood the magnitude of what their dad was doing um, during the whole court case.
That's what was so moving was when the preacher told Scout, "Hey, stand up. Your father is passing." And the point there was the entire balcony was applauding Atticus Finch for the what he had just done to represent Tom Robinson, to be the voice of Tom.
That's what this girl in Miami, I said, what does being a lawyer mean? And I was teaching these ninth graders, and she goes, it means being a voice box for the voiceless. And I was like,
Mm,
dang, you're a poet. And you could make a good lawyer. And I'm like, yeah, that's exactly what Atticus is. And that's what every lawyer is, really.
Well, that's when Jim was told. I think it was the woman next door who said, "Hey, your father is the one who does the unpleasant jobs for us." And basically, there's a whole lot of unpleasant work in the world, and it needs people to do it.
yeah. How do you feel? I mean, as a parent yourself, Keith, how important is it to teach your children to stand up for what's right, to respect other people, not to make judgments, things like that?
Impossible. It's pretty much impossible. I mean, you do the best you can do. I think, it goes back to the understanding people walk a mile in their shoes, and you try to portray that, you try to portray your character traits every day. It's not something that you just say, "Hey, let me put on my cloak and suddenly become this magic person." Shirelle, I mean, you are hopefully you are walking the walk every day. And I think the judge and the jury and the client sees that, understands that, and it's very important that you demonstrate that. But here we saw, you know, Dill, his name was Dill, that little boy, and Jim and Scout. And Atticus said to them, um, hey, there's a lot of issues in the world. There's a lot of concern. There's a lot to be fearful of. But he tried to a little bit puncture that and say, don't worry, it's all just talk. It's a blowhard thing. So he's trying to minimize the concern. It turned out to be real because we had Bob attacking the children. But I think the job of the parent was to not let fear take over your behavior. That was a long way of saying it's hard.
Mm.
Yeah, I like when Atticus said, I wish I could protect you from everyone, but I can't. He goes, that's impossible. And he said there are these racist people out there, and I can't keep those people from you. I can't keep you from them from you. And I think that makes us stronger to go through that, to go through those kinds of everyday trials and tribulations too. And it sucks that that has to be something that people go through, but going through it shapes who we are, makes us even stronger, I think. And that's why, Scout, all those fights she's been in, she's so strong. You don't mess with Scout.
Right.
And that was Harper Lee's character. Harper Lee modeled Scout after herself.
Oh wow. Okay.
Well,
I
let
know
me
the
add,
book was kind of about her family and things that she experienced growing up.
Yeah.
So,
you mean this book?
Not quite.
So
are there any
Shirelle,
recipes in there, Keith?
there are a bunch of them. Yeah, you got to get a copy. But let's go back to the ugliness in the world that we all see every day, and I want to talk about difficult opposing lawyers. When that comes up, which it comes up quite often, what do you do? How do you react to that? And do you try to change them from being so mean and ugly, or do you just recognize, hey, that's going to happen. I'm going to do what I should do.
Is that question for me or for
Yeah.
Max?
Yeah, for
Yeah.
you.
I'm sorry. Ask it again.
Well, the issue is when you have difficult opposing counsel, they may be mean, they may be nasty, they may be like our friend Bob Ewell here, um, and you have to deal with them. Do you ignore them and go on and do your stuff, or do you try to impact their meanness and ugliness?
Um, to be honest, I mean, even just in general, dealing with difficult people, I wouldn't say you would ignore it because you can't. You have to deal with the person. You have to communicate with them, especially when it comes to like litigation or if we're dealing with an issue and we're trying to resolve it. I just think people always say kill 'em with kindness. Not sure how well that works, but. But I feel like personally for me, I'm always going to maintain my professionalism. I'm still going to be respectful. I'm not trying to change your mind or change who you are because, people are who they are. There's nothing I can do to kind of make you be different. I can try to show you maybe my perspective on things. I can try to reason with you. There are times where people like that are not reasonable. So, there's really, I just try to move forward. I try to be respectful, be professional, and get the job done.
Max, what do you do? Do you experience that a lot? And if so, what do you try to do?
I don't experience it as much. I know, like, I'm pretty active on LinkedIn, so I know a lot of female attorneys experience it, and attorneys of color, unfortunately, experience it. But uh, people are pretty normal with me. The worst I've had is just people that don't really respond to the questions. But later, like one of those became one of my close friends. So you never know. With certain people, you can you kind of realize it's like what the movie was saying. If you walk in their shoes, like you can kind of recognize why opposing counsel is how they are. And some of them are like that because they think that's what a lawyer should be, like a pit bull, just just somebody who's trying to attack, or somebody who's more gentle and cost avoidant. So you can kind of pick that up later on as you deal with them. You pick up why they are how they are.
Yeah, I think what's so important to me, Sherelle, is to communicate to the client what I'm dealing with, not all the time, but the big picture overview is, hey, this lawyer or this client on the other side is very difficult to deal with, and here's a few examples. And I have seen it more lately I agree with you, Max, that some lawyers think, hey, my job is to kind of be the hatchet man and to be on the attack at all times, and that somehow helps their cause. It makes things very difficult. It makes the justice system that we all live in very difficult to deal with. The saying is we have the worst system in the world except all the others. So it's a very difficult system, and it's made even more difficult when you have a difficult person that you're dealing with.
I just want to deal with Boo Ridley as the opposing counsel because he never said anything. He made
Right.
he was my favorite character. I remember when I read the book in high school, I was like, I like this guy. And then for some reason, when I was watching it, I kind of remembered in the back of my mind that I liked Boo Ridley the most. But then when I watched it, I was like, I forgot which lines I liked him for. I guess it was the absence of lines.
Well, the great thing is that's the film entree for Robert Duvall, and I kept looking because I saw that Robert Duvall was in the movie, and I kept looking for him. I looked on the jury, I looked at the judge, I looked at the sheriff. I never saw Robert Duvall, and then at the very end, when Boo is revealed, oh, there you go, that's Robert Duvall.
He looked
And
like Johnny Depp, like with when he does like the different colored hair. It just looked like Johnny Depp to me.
well, and it was great that he was portrayed as a very empathetic person. Took Scout's hand. Scout walked him back to his house. It was a very good portrayal.
Yeah, you have no words, but I want you to convey every emotion in that a human can
Just make
experience.
faces.
Yeah,
I really liked Atticus's character, partially because when I had aspirations of being an attorney, I was always like, justice will be served. But I
hey,
think
same
watching
dude.
Law and Order too much kind of pushed me away from those dreams. But I also, I mean, even at the end when he was ready to kind of turn Boo over to the authorities, I'm like, wow, he's definitely like, I'm gonna stick to being an upstanding
Yeah,
person, from to the
justice for all.
end.
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, he was my favorite. I definitely can appreciate somebody who was like wants to be on the right side of things.
Well, you make a great point. I think Atticus Finch inspired a lot of people to become lawyers to stand up for truth and justice, and whether it's a criminal case. I kind of felt the same way. Um, but I think the inspiration is there. I think, at the end of the movie, he was actually ready to turn Jim in. He was thinking, hey, Jim killed Bob, and he never thought it was Boo. And the sheriff was the one who thought, hey, Boo stuck the knife into Bob. And the fact that Atticus was ready to deal with Jim killing Bob was a huge moment. And I thought it again showed that he walks the walk and walks it always. And he was ready to deal with the honesty of what happened, but recognizing that meant that Jim was going to be indicted.
See, whereas I have much more family loyalty, I would not turn my dad in for those 47 crimes he committed in 1997.
I think
I
they
would
wrote a
not do
book
that.
about that. Actually, they may have made a wine. I should look in the book, but
19
I think it
crimes?
was called 47 Crimes.
I think it's called 19 crimes, but close,
Oh,
close.
that was close.
Mhm. I must
I
have
mean,
misread that last scene because I really thought that Atticus thought that Boo killed Bob.
No, he thought Jim did because remember he goes, he goes, man, my memory is really getting shot because he goes, what is Jim, 12, 13? And he's talking about, is he going to go to juvie? or is he going to go to county?
Oh, okay, yeah, I remember
And
that.
Boo would not have the juvenile detention thing because he's like Robert Duvall was 29 when he played Boo,
Oh
and
wow.
Robert Duvall's still alive. That's crazy. 94. Don't jinx it. Knock on wood. But
Yeah.
Yeah, you know what's funny? I always like look up the actors of a movie to see like who's still alive. A lot of them have passed away,
oh
but
yeah,
there
because
were
it
a
was
few people.
1962. Yeah,
Yeah, there were a few people who are still alive. So
I hope Jim
it's-
and Scout are still alive. They'd be pretty
I
young.
think they are. Yeah,
Yeah.
And
yeah. I'm
Dill.
pretty sure Scout
Oh
is,
yeah. Yeah.
but the other little boy he passed away.
Oh, did
Oh
he?
no.
Yeah, he was 42 when he passed.
Uh,
Passed really young. Yeah.
yeah, that's the interesting part on movies. It's like it's made in that time, and so it's forever set in that time. So the movie was made in 62 and it's set in 39. Or at least that's how it starts in 1939. And it'll forever be like that. So, but that was such a good representation of To Kill a Mockingbird that there's never been a sequel. I misspoke last time and said I saw the Matthew McConaughey and Samuel L. Jackson sequel, but that's called A Time to Kill. It's not called To Kill a Mockingbird.
Yeah, I think the important thing I want to focus on and get your thoughts, Shirelle, on this is the stereotypes. And we saw how Atticus dealt with them. We, all of us, experience these stereotypes daily. Um, and I found that, it certainly helps to have the key players and the timeline and try to have a theme of what is going on, what happened. I call it an elevator speech, meaning from the time you get on the elevator until you get off, you have to be able to summarize what happened. Here, what happened was that we know that um, Bob Yule's daughter kissed Tom Robinson, and we know, that she talked about the chifforobe, and as far as I could tell, a chifforobe is kind of a piece of furniture. You can hang your clothes up in it, and there's a drawer. And to bust up a chifforobe, which is what she was asking Tom Robinson to do, apparently means to destroy a stereotype. The stereotype was that you couldn't have a white woman kiss a black man. And so there's sort of that underlayer of destroying the chifforobe. And then we see what happens. We see that the jury believes that Tom is guilty of something because of those lies. So that promotes a stereotype and really, really hard to deal with. What do you think? Sure.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think um people will hold on to their beliefs, and it's difficult to be for them to when they're challenged, it's difficult to change someone's mind. If you've already decided like, hey, this is the truth, these are facts. um and even sometimes when people are presented with what the truth really is, it's very difficult for them to accept it, because that means everything that they believe was a lie. I think like people are willing to die on that hill, so to speak, um, because otherwise their whole life would be, or not even necessarily their whole life, but their belief system would be kind of shattered essentially. I think it's unfortunate. I think that, thankfully today, there are so many people that are more open minded, that are more willing to kind of stray away from stereotypes. I mean, obviously, stereotypes come from some truth, but you can't live there, like you kind of have to be able to be flexible and to see different perspectives and have a better understanding of people, as a whole. Everybody's not the same. We're not cookie cutter, you know people.
Well, you just said so many things that are so important, and I want to pick two of them, Max, and I want to focus in on this. Shirelle talked about, the jury, and I think it's so important that we have a system of justice that is based upon the verdict of that jury, which here we'll say that's 12 people, but you have 12 people conferring, and there's no doubt that you're going to have stereotypes on that jury, but you don't have one person, you don't have two, you have 12. And that's what makes it so important. And the second thing is that, and we might talk about 12 angry men and the fact that, there was one holdout, and that one holdout can influence the other members of the jury. And that kind of goes back to the theme of what is going on. So, having said that, Max, what do you think about the jury system and the influence, the impact of stereotypes?
I love the jury system, and it's supposed to be a cross section of the community, and I think it often is successfully a fair cross section of the community. So we get what we are designed to get, and what we're designed to get is something that is very good overall. It's going to have mistakes. Every system is going to have mistakes, but you pick which one that you can live with the best and you move forward from there.
Yeah, I think what's so important is that, and here in this movie, there was going to be an appeal, and we have the right to appeal. You look at this jury, and it wasn't racially diverse. There were no women on the jury. I mean, it was kind of stacked against the defendant, Tom Robinson, and you still had Atticus willing to confront that issue and try to convey the true facts to the jury. But as you said, Shirelle, there are stereotypes, there are belief systems on that jury. You have to deal with that.
Right.
All right, let's talk about the ending of the movie. Did you like the ending of the movie, or did you not like the ending of the movie? Are you neutral? I liked the ending of the movie. I thought it was really good. It's almost like showing John Wick or The Equalizer. It's showing that sometimes the justice system doesn't handle everything it needs to handle. So you
Right.
need this superhero of sorts. So Boo Ridley is almost this like superhero of sorts to correct all the flaws in the justice system. We still have a very flawed justice system, but it's improving. It's getting incremental improvement every day. As AI is coming on, as good AI is coming in, it's getting better and better. And I have high hopes for a better and better justice system.
Yeah, I enjoyed the movie overall. I liked the ending because at least justice was served, in my opinion. Like especially when it came to Bob and Boo. I think that I don't want to say bittersweet because I didn't necessarily think it was a bittersweet ending. It was really good. The film overall and even in the ending as well. I liked that. Boo probably has a chance. I mean, I'm probably thinking too hard about it, but if there was more to the story, he probably would have a better chance of being accepted by people in the neighborhood, whereas
Yeah.
people were just afraid of him. But I think now there's an opportunity for the community to grow and to learn and hopefully little by little chip away at those stereotypes.
Yeah, I look at it as two endings to the movie. The first ending is when Tom gets killed, convicted, and then killed, and I really didn't like that at all. And then you had another ending when the children get attacked by Bob Ewell, who represents evil, and goodness comes out in the form of Boo, and you know, wins that struggle. So I really, really like that. And I like finally to see Robert Duvall.
All right, we're right at 40 minutes. I think that's a good time to end it, unless anybody's got anything big.
No,
All right.
I didn't
No.
realize that was Robert Duvall until you guys just said it during our conversation, because I've only seen him in his much later films. So
Yeah.
I was like, oh, is that who that was? I didn't know